What's up, guys? Welcome to Zenith Astrology. Today we're going to be talking about what happens when you have Mars. What does Aries represent? Aries represents war in a general sense. So you have the ruler of Aries and the sign of Aries, which has its own positives and minuses, just like every placement. But Mars doesn't really have to do with the past or anything like that, unless it's in the sign of Cancer, and it doesn't really have to do with the future unless it's in the sign of Aquarius. When you have Mars here, when Mars goes into Aries, you have like double the Aries energy, so you have to be like careful with this, because it means that you're this shows how you drive. Mercury rules cars in general, but because it's something that you do locally, but Mars rules the action of the car, because Mars is an action planet, so it rules the act of going out and driving and or going somewhere. So this shows how you get around, where your drive comes from. Mercury is how the drive in your local environment is going to express itself. But Mars is where your drive comes from. This shows how it comes from, where it comes from, if it comes from an earthy place, if it comes from a fiery place. And this is only one part of your personality, so depending on your other aspects, you can have anything with Mars. You can have Mars in any other sign with your sun sign and your moon sign, because Mars lands in all places of the zodiac. It's not like Mercury or Venus, where they have to be close to the sun. But this shows your will to drive. So it also rules cars in a general sense, because when you go to drive somewhere, you're that's what Mars symbolizes, your drive, how you get your drive, where it's going to come from, and what type of way it's going to be. And so in Aries, this is at home here. It's in its natural elements, so it's not better or worse than other people's placements, but you're gonna have a lot of energy because it's a fire and on a fire sign. You have to take into consideration that your drive is also just starting out in the zodiac. It's in the place that is associated with immaturity. So people might associate you, even though it is a planet of in its own home. I don't like saying the planets are comfortable here and are not comfortable there. Certain things are going to happen worse than others. So you shouldn't be believing that some planets are automatically going to have like all these positives that come with them, because a lot of placements, it's not about the planet being uncomfortable in the sign. It's about that person's going to go through a lot of fucking shit. And I don't mean to curse, but I think here, in a place of Aries, I'm allowed to curse because Aries is a direct sign, so you'll understand certain things. Well, you might not, because this is a very competitive placement, so you might want to fight a lot with people, but there are things in the zodiac that make your shit harder, and that's just a straight up fact. It's not about what everybody else is parroting about. Oh, this planet doesn't like being in this sign. It depends on certain things. Like we're talking about the personal planets. We're talking about the personal planets that don't have to do with the luminaries. Uh, well, the luminaries are very personal to you. These are semi-personal. I would call them the semi-personal planets, whereas the outer planets are transpersonal. And your sun and moon are very personal. Those are like super personal to you. So you're gonna be able to relate to this in a semi-personal way. It's not gonna be your entire. It's not gonna be your entire personality because Aries, your Mars is not. Mars is a semi-personal planet, and it's not associated with the past or the future. It's just in general shows how you go around, how you do things, how you get around, how you like to get around, where your drive comes from, how you drive a car also because Mars rules cars. The will to want to drive somewhere. Mars is your drive, and when you're driving a car, that's symbolized by Mars. So when you have Mercury retrograde, when you have Mars go retrograde, or if you have Mercury retrograde in your chart, or you have Mars retrograde in your chart, you're wanting to drive with a car, and how you drive with a car and stuff like that has to be very careful because the will is your will to drive, your want to drive is being thrown back on itself. That's what retrograde means. It means to take it deeper before you put something out. So that's why you'll find people with Mars retrograde. I have Mars retrograde in my chart, and it makes me go into myself before I put something out with my will or my drive. So you have to be careful with. But it also depends on what sign you have it in. So mine is in Virgo. That's not really a. It doesn't really exacerbate the retrograde because it's an Earth sign and it's a sign of calculation. So but it is a sign for me to be more calculative with my will. Because the planets do both. They both symbolize what you're going to do, and there's also they symbolize what you're going to do about to 75% of the time. But if you get conscious of it and you work on it, or you see it, it's there for you to be able to see. Astrology is there for you to be able to figure out. A lot of people can't. A lot of people don't want to. It's there for you to figure out. It's a message. If you get through all the other stuff, like you're gonna have to. If you're religious, you're gonna have to think about if you're gonna go to hell with it or not. I already thought about that, and I don't want to push affect other people with my views. So I don't want you copying what it is that I feel, but just personally, it doesn't make any sense to me that God or the universe would make you go to hell for knowing astrology. It just. And there is always a sign for you in your astrology chart. And when you have Mars in Aries, it basically means that you're going to have a lot of energy. And, Aries has a symbol of the horns on it. So it just means, to be careful with how you're coming off and watching what you have to, how you go about with your will, how it is that you do your will. Because with the fire signs, like you have a planet that is ruled by both Aries and Scorpio, but it's in a fire sign, so you could really be starting fires with this. And like I said, the people that I've known with this, a couple people, they've been very combative and had to come back and kind of apologize or couldn't even argue, because this kind of shows how you fight. And that's the other thing about Aries that I wanted to say. So Aries in a general sense means war. And if the society was evolved then Aries would only symbolize war. Like you might feel like you're having a war with your neighbors, but it's not an actual war. So it means any type of war that you go through. This could mean you feel like you're having a war trying to get your point across to others. Or if you want to go out and fight for something, like let's say activism is the good kind of fighting. Aries symbolizes activism in a warlike sense. Aquarius symbolizes it in the idealistic, also implement it like sense, warlike sense, because Aquarius has the when there's a sports game on and they put that stuff on the screen and they're like X and O and this and that. That's what Aquarius. One of the things that Aquarius' symbol stands for, the strategy in war. So Aquarius understands war just like Aries. But in a general sense, it just means to feel warlike, and unfortunately the society has not healed their warlike tendencies yet, so we're still using Aries in the wrong way. We're still using the sign of Aquarius and strategy in the wrong way. So that's why it keeps becoming a physical manifestation of the sign, but if you have the sign of Aries with Mars, it basically just means that you're going to feel like with your drive and with certain people, there's going to be like some warlike situations going on. Yes, you have the power to do a lot with this placement and for good, if you use it for good. But you have to, this means your Mars is going to be kind of a selfish place. That's basically what Aries means. It doesn't mean, it's also bravery, wanting to go first, competition. It can be, turn dark or light, but in terms of getting things done, like as long as you have things to do, you should be okay with this, but you have to make sure that what it is that you're doing before you go do it isn't injuring other people, or you could end up with bad karma in the next life. There's probably some people that have or have had Mars in Aries placements, and their Mars ends up in Pisces in the next life, and that was actually my neighbor's placement that she died. I have a Scorpio fourth house, so that is a hint to where some of the places where I can stay, and I'm around a lot of death here, and people would be very shocked to find out where it is that I actually live. And I live very humbly, and how I live very humbly, only a couple people know. So, but my neighbor had Mars and Pisces, so that's what you have to be careful. You don't have to go through all the placements in the zodiac. I don't know why people think that. And yeah, Aquarius is a symbol. That's why Aquarius rules astrology, because they go to the source, or what they feel is inside about the source. That's why Aquarians are known as sorcerers. There's sorcery and there's being a sorcerer, which Aquarius and Scorpio are the most signs associated with that. Just go to the source, which is inside for Aquarius, being independent. They go on the inside to find the answer for you. Like, why does everyone think that everybody just steps through the zodiac in a neat little orderly way? You can get sent to Capricorn in the next life. That's why I'm saying you have to be careful, with your placements. You could if you have a Capricorn luminary in the next life, this is what it means. If you abuse this placement and you're just riding roughshod over people, and you're all, it's at an all cost to win, and you're running over people and you're crashing into things, and you can end up with a Capricorn luminary in the next life. And if you have Venus or Mars or Mercury Capricorn, that doesn't really mean that you have karma with that placement. you would have to have the sun or the moon associated with it. Like you would have to have the moon in Capricorn with Venus in Capricorn, or you would have to have the sun in Capricorn with Venus in Capricorn. But it can set you up like that in the next life where you get an Aries sun next time around with a Capricorn moon. And that basically means that you could have taken this placement in a past life and, were very selfish with it and burned other people's will and drive, because Mars symbolizes drive. So you have the sign of drive and the sign of drive. So if you use it in a positive way, yes, it's going to go very well. But, this is another Aquarian sorcery type thing that no one else is going to be able to say and that I haven't thought about that I'm telling you guys here. That's what you can see with Aquarians. They'll go to the source with you. They'll tell you when they're going to the source with you. And they'll do it with you in the moment. That's what I'm saying. But basically it means because Aries has not been healed, this sign has not been healed, people don't really know what it is. We don't know if we're supposed to know about the zodiac. We don't know if we're supposed to tell people. To me, I feel like we're supposed to know, and people don't know. We're supposed to learn through the zodiac. Somebody tricked us into thinking that we're not supposed to learn through the zodiac. So that's what I'm telling you. Aries is a hard sign to make go correctly when you have a lot of it, especially. So you have to be careful and work with an astrologer, work with me on this placement. I'm not saying you have to work with me right now, but as you see, my personality over the years, if you grow to trust me, you can work with an Aquarius with this placement. But it's really about let me check my will, even though some astrologers are going to tell you Mars is okay in this sign. That's why they're not known as sorcerers, because they don't go to the source. They read something and they'll just tell you, well, Mars is at home here. You'll go to 1,000 sites and they'll tell you Mars is in its domicile here. The sun is exalted in Aries. They don't give you any other reasons why. But since Aquarius goes to the source and they're known as sorcerers, or that's what I'm telling you. That's from the source. You have to be careful with this placement, because you could do a lot of damage with it. Yes, Mars is in its domicile here, but like I said, since they don't know what the sign of Aries is, they're not a sign of war. Aries can know a little bit what the sign of Aries is, but not really, because it's an immature placement. It's an immature sign, so it does have innocence associated with it. Like, for instance, Astrolata, she's an Aries sun, and she said that Aquarians are not that sexual. And I've studied my sign in depth, and I know myself in depth. So I know that even our symbol, if you look at it, it looks like semen. So that's, and very strong semen. There's a couple other signs that look like that, but they don't look as strong. And Aquarius is known as, birthing a lot of, Uranus, the god, was known as birthing a lot of kids and children, and having its overly creative tendencies cut off by Saturn, or calmed down by Saturn. So, that's what I'm saying. Aries, yes, their try is going to be nice. Your try is going to be nice. It's gonna, you can help a lot of people, but Aries is just not known as a sorcerer, as a source sign. It's just starting out, so it's going to mirror the similarities of a child. Where it wants to be entertained, it's going to have a lot of energy, it's going to say a lot of things, and this doesn't mean that you're going to be like that, because this, if you don't, unless you have your sun or your moon in the sign of Aries, then you can take what I'm saying deeper, and depending on how many you have. If you have your sun and moon in Aries, you can take it 2 times as deeply. But in general, this just means if you only have Mars in Aries, that your drive is going to be immature. It's also going to be in its own sign, but that's what astrology is. That's why Aquarius rules astrology. And when you look at our symbol, it has the 2 lines. It's about taking the paradox. When somebody tells you it's both in its domicile sign and it's both the most immature sign. So you have to combine those together and make sure if you see an Aries leading in the destructive way, and just leading with its horns constantly, and then you have to take matters into your own hands and help them out with this placement because they don't know how much energy they have, and that's why I'm saying Aquarius. An Aquarius astrologer should give you some original stuff that you've never heard before, because that's what Aquarius rules. They rule uniqueness, so they'll be able to tell you some things, and they're channeling stuff for the signs while they do astrology, and you should be able to see that they're doing it while they're doing astrology. If they say that they're 11th house, that's not Aquarius. If they say they're Uranus conjunct Sun, that's not Aquarius. You have to be a luminary Aquarius. The luminaries have a lot more stuff in them, so you're not going to be an Aries. You're a Mars in Aries. Your drive and how you get around will be Aryan in nature, but you won't have the deep Aryan personality or characteristics. So, anyway, that was my video on Mars and Aquarius, and if you stay tuned, I'm going to have Mars and Jupiter next.